Alright, welcome back to a second edition of the Courier's Holdin Court video blog or vlog. Today we come to you from the largest on-campus basketball arena in the nation, the Courier Dome in Syracuse, New York, where of course the UNI Panther men are going to be taking on number 10 Syracuse in a season opening game that features 60 combined wins from last year. That, as you might guess, is the most of any season opener in the nation this season. I'm Kelly Beaton, the Waterloo Courier's UNI men's basketball beat writer, and let's break down this game. First of all, I apologize for kind of the disheveled appearance here. When you're 6'3" like me and you got to fly basically in the fetal position from O'Hare Airport to Syracuse, New York, you got to be comfortable. And speaking of air travel today too, I left the Eastern Iowa Airport extremely early this morning. There was nobody else there except for, as it turns out, the UNI women's basketball squad, which was headed west to Colorado State. And it's kind of interesting, you know, as recently as about 3 years ago, their old coach, Tony DeCecco, used to have them ride buses all the way out to Wyoming and places like that. So apparently the UNI women's basketball squad is moving up in the world after that NCAA tournament appearance last March. But let's break down this UNI Syracuse men's basketball season opener. And flying out here, I was looking at the latest edition of the Sporting News, and they really have to be gushing about, as coincidence would have it, this Syracuse team that's shooting extra baskets behind me right now in the Courier Dome. The Sporting News predicted Syracuse to win the Big East this year, predicted forward Chris Joseph to be the Big East Player of the Year, predicted 7-foot Brazilian freshman Fab Melo to be the Freshman of the Year in the Big East, and it also raved about guard Scoop Jardine. What's also interesting, though, is in that very same edition of the Sporting News, it said that UNI point guard Kajoa Heligba is the best leader of any so-called mid-major program out there. So it's kind of interesting to look at all that on the eve of this big game here Friday night at 6 p.m. in the Courier Dome, which you can watch on ESPN3.com and also get a lot of updates at WCFcourier.com. Looking elsewhere, let's look at the keys to this game. Basically, I got a chance to talk to Jim Boeheim, the longtime iconic coach of Syracuse, yesterday at length on the phone. It was kind of interesting. He really praised the Panthers at length, and he's really concerned about UNI's kind of patented man-to-man defense, which we all know in Iowa can be extremely stifling. Panthers held about 20 opponents last year to 55 points or less, which is still kind of amazing to think about just a few months after the fact. I think a bigger factor in this game, though, could be UNI's ability or perhaps inability to find cracks in Syracuse's patented 2-3 zone defense. Talking to Jake Cook this week, he really thought UNI's best chance to find cracks in that 2-3 zone is with a lot of shot fakes and a lot of pass fakes. And Jake Cook also mentioned that UNI might have a secret or a trick or two up its sleeve. Of course, he wasn't divulging any secrets, though, so it's going to be interesting to see what those tricks might in fact be. And the final, overall, probably biggest key when you just look at this game logically on paper is how is UNI, a team with just one true center on its entire roster, going to match up with Syracuse's immense length? The Orange have 2 7-footers, and of course they have the aforementioned Fab Melo, who I just watched in practice here. And watching him, he doesn't look like, you know, he's got Kevin Garnett type athleticism, but the guy is good. He's a fair amount more athletic than we saw at Jordan Eggleseder the past few years at UNI. So how is UNI going to contend with those extremely tall guys for Syracuse? I think the only true center on UNI's roster, as we kind of alluded to, Austin Peele at 6'10", he needs to have a breakout game. He needs to make his presence felt, and he needs to arrive tomorrow night, Friday night, here in the Courier Dome. Last note I kind of want to make to you guys too is got here ridiculously early today, so did some sightseeing sort of around the Syracuse area. It's an interesting area. It's a little different than Iowa. It's got kind of woodsy terrain, a lot of kind of swamp-like areas. It looks a little like, you know, where Paulie Walnuts from The Sopranos might take an adversary and put a hit out on him in The Sopranos. which, if you're a UNI fan, you have to hope is not an omen of things to come here on Friday night. But that's really going to do it for this edition of Holdin Court. Just want to remind you, though, that here on Friday night at 5 p.m. on WCFcourier.com, we'll have our first live on-site UNI basketball-related web chat. You can get on there, just go to the main page at WCFcourier.com. There should usually be a link near the top of the page to join the chat. Of course, we're going to have a live chat starting 1 hour before every UNI men's basketball game this year, except for maybe the Milwaukee game because of a scheduling conflict with Iowa State football. One last note is on Twitter.com, you can follow me and get tons of frequent UNI updates, usually about 10 times a day, because I love Twitter. I love trying to keep people informed of kind of behind-the-scenes stuff on UNI basketball. Like, I'll be snapping some shots here of the Carrier Dome. It's kind of an interesting setup. They got the court here pushed towards one corner of the arena, and they still got the football turf on the other half, which is kind of interesting. But to keep my long story short, you can follow me on Twitter.com. My name on there is Kelly at Courier, Kellyat, Courier. You just spell it all out. But that's going to do it for this edition of Holdin Court, the Courier's UNI basketball-related vlog. Thanks for checking in. Take care.